Welcome to our exploration today, where we're looking into the fascinating field of space tourism.
It's definitely a hot topic right now.
Absolutely. You might have seen the recent news buzz about Katy Perry and Lauren Sanchez, Jeff Bezos' fiancée, possibly planning a trip to space together.
Right. That caught my eye too.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Who exactly has already left Earth, what drives them, and, what remarkable stories are behind these journeys?
Exactly. And it's interesting because while we hear a lot about the current players, commercial spaceflight actually has a longer history than many people might realize.
That's a great point. It's not just a recent phenomenon kicked off by billionaires.
Not at all. If we look back at the early steps, the pioneers, it helps frame where we are today.
Okay, let's do that. Let's start with those pioneers.
Yeah.
One of the very first was Toyohiro Akiyama, a Japanese journalist who flew to the Russian Mir space station way back in 1990.
Yeah, Akiyama's story is quite something. What's really notable is that his flight was entirely funded by his employer, the TV network TBS.
Funded by a TV network. How much did that cost?
The figure was around 1.26 billion yen back then. Imagine that. A TV station sending a reporter to space.
Incredible. And he had to prepare quite a bit, didn't he?
Oh, definitely. He learned Russian, he even quit smoking for it. And the groundbreaking part, he was the first person whose spaceflight wasn't paid for by a government space agency.
So the first truly non-government funded space traveler.
Precisely. A
Yeah.
completely new model.
Yeah.
And interestingly, after he got back, he took a surprising turn and became a farmer.
From space to farming. Wow. Makes you think about the perspective shift you get up there.
It certainly does. What seeing Earth from orbit does to you.
Then, a bit later, there was Dennis Tito in 2001. He went to the International Space Station, the ISS. I remember that being quite controversial at the time.
It was. Tito, an entrepreneur, flew on a Russian Soyuz capsule, and yeah, it caused quite a stir, especially on the American side.
Why there was...
Well, there was pushback initially. He actually had restrictions placed on him, like he could only enter the American module of the station if escorted.
Really?
Yes, and he had to sign an agreement making him liable for any potential damages he might cause.
Okay, so it shows private spaceflight was still very new, very unfamiliar territory, lots of concerns about safety and responsibility.
Exactly. It was the first tentative step into that new era, you could say.
Now, a completely different chapter, but tragically linked to space travel, is the story of Krista McAuliffe and the Teacher in Space program. That's one that's deeply etched in collective memory.
Oh, absolutely. Krista McAuliffe. She was selected in 1985 from over 11,000 applicants.
11,000? Wow.
Yeah, the plan was for her to teach lessons live from the space shuttle while in orbit.
Such an inspiring idea, wasn't it? Making space seem accessible, boosting interest in science.
Incredibly inspiring, which made the Challenger disaster just all the more horrific.
Ah,
The shuttle exploded shortly after launch, and McAuliffe and the entire crew were lost.
a terrible reminder.
It was a brutal reminder of just how dangerous spaceflight can be, the immense risks involved, even with all the planning.
A stark moment. It reminds us that despite progress, it's still inherently risky. But let's shift to maybe a slightly lighter story. Guy Laliberté, the founder of Cirque du Soleil, he also made the leap to space. Quite the character, right?
Definitely. Started as a juggler and fire eater, became
Welcome.
a billionaire. Quite a life story.
And he went to space.
He did. For his 50th birthday, he fulfilled his dream of flying to the ISS. It cost him around 24 million euros.
Some birthday gift.
Right. And his comment about the smell of the station was, well, memorable. He described it as a mix of cleaning supplies and something indescribable.
Uh-huh, really. That gives such an unexpected human glimpse into life off Earth. Not quite the sterile environment you might imagine.
Exactly. It challenges our expectations versus the mundane reality sometimes.
These personal anecdotes really bring it to life. Okay, now let's get to the current generation of space entrepreneurs. Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin, Elon Musk with SpaceX. Bezos flew himself in 2021, just after Richard Branson. What are the main differences in their approaches, especially regarding space tourism?
Well, Bezos' flight, with his half-brother, was what's called a suborbital flight,
Meaning?
meaning they briefly touched the edge of space, but then came right back down. These Blue Origin flights last only a few minutes and are fully automated.
Quick up and down.
Pretty much. Interestingly, the first teenager in space, Oliver Damon, and the oldest person, William Shatner, Both flew with Blue Origin.
Right, I remember Shatner going up.
And Shatner's reaction afterwards was surprisingly reflective, wasn't it? He described his journey feeling like a funeral rather than a celebration.
That was unexpected, especially from Captain Kirk himself.
It really was. It makes you wonder about the emotional and psychological impact of these short, intense experiences. Do they always meet the traveler's expectations?
A very profound takeaway from such a short trip. And what about Elon Musk and SpaceX? Their goals seem much more ambitious going beyond these brief hops.
Yeah, SpaceX is focusing more on longer missions. They've already sent tourists into orbit, actually circling the Earth.
Orbiting, not just suborbital.
Correct. And Musk's long-term vision includes crewed flights to the moon and eventually Mars. He hasn't flown himself yet, but his company is obviously a major force in advancing commercial spaceflight, aiming for much farther destinations than Blue Origin's suborbital flights.
So a different kind of space tourism potential there, longer stays, maybe different perspectives.
Potentially, yes. A different scale of experience.
Okay, bringing us closer to the present and back towards the news that sparked our discussion today. Rabea Raj became the first German woman in space on a private mission. How did that come about?
Raj was invited by a crypto billionaire, Chun Wang. That flight, which lasted 4 days, was actually framed as a scientific expedition. Yes. Alongside Raj, there was a polar guide and a filmmaker. It's notable because, even though it was a private initiative, there was a clear focus on scientific observation.
So she didn't just make history personally, but also showed that private flights can contribute to research.
Exactly. It demonstrated another potential dimension for these private missions.
And that brings us right back to the current buzz about Katy Perry and Lauren Sanchez. The reports say they're planning to fly with an all-female crew. What do we know about that?
That planned Blue Origin flight is indeed said to have an all-female crew, which, sends a strong message about diversity in space.
Who else is reportedly on board?
Besides Perry and Sanchez, the crew is said to include a former rocket scientist, the well-known broadcaster Gayle King, and a film producer.
An interesting mix. But is there a scientific angle like Rove's mission?
It doesn't seem like it. Unlike Rhoda's flight, the focus here appears to be more on the experience itself and perhaps the media attention.
Right.
The flight is expected to be just 10 or 11 minutes long, that typical Blue Origin suborbital profile. And Katy Perry has even mentioned wanting to sing during the flight.
Singing in microgravity for a few minutes.
Apparently so.
Uh-huh.
It feels more like an exclusive high-profile excursion, maybe a PR event, rather than something aimed at scientific discovery or a deep engagement with space.
A very short trip for a lot of attention, but I suppose it shows the sheer variety of motivations and possibilities emerging in space tourism already.
It certainly does.
So if we look back at all these stories we've discussed, from Akiyama, McAuliffe, Liberté, through to Bezos, Musk, and these latest plans, what are the main takeaways? What patterns do we see?
We see a really remarkable evolution, don't we? It started with individual, sometimes quite eccentric pioneers, driven by very different things: journalism, education, pure adventure. Then came the visionary entrepreneurs, whose tech innovations really pushed commercial spaceflight forward in a major way.
Right, building the actual infrastructure.
Exactly. And today we're seeing increasingly diverse groups of people getting the chance, albeit a very expensive chance for most, to see Earth from that unique vantage point.
The journey from those early Mir visits to today's short suborbital hops is quite something.
It highlights incredibly rapid development in a relatively short time.
Absolutely. And of course, it raises fascinating questions for the future, doesn't it? What does all this mean for the continued exploration of space?
Will space tourism help drive down costs for future scientific missions? Maybe make space more accessible beyond the super rich?
Or will it remain an exclusive playground? And think about everyone listening. Who among us might actually get the chance in the coming years or decades to see that incredible view of our planet for themselves?
That's the big question, isn't it? Definitely something worth pondering as this all unfolds.